Barcelona's season opens with a new problem. Their captain has publicly aligned with a protest that directly opposes a move the club appears to accept, and the consequences have already begun to echo through the corridors of the club. Marc-Andre Ter Stegen, a figure who has worn Barca's armband through triumph and turbulence, quietly appended his signature to a letter circulated by La Liga captains opposing the decision to relocate the Villarreal fixture to Miami, a decision framed by some as a commercial opportunity and by others as a surrender of tradition. What might once have been dismissed as another routine show of solidarity now reads as something much sharper, a captain placing himself on the opposite side of an idea the club's hierarchy does not want publicly contested. That alone is enough to reopen the wound from a tense summer, the episode when Ter Stegen and the club sparred over the sharing of his medical reports, a standoff that led to his temporary removal from captain duties before the two sides reconciled and he was reinstated. For many inside Barca, that memory complicates the calculus. A captain who has already been through a public clash with the club cannot simply be viewed in the same light when he signs a league-wide protest. At root, the worry is simple and practical. When the man entrusted with rallying the dressing room chooses to join a public opposition that contradicts club plans, the image of unity the board sells to partners and fans begins to crack. Dressing room cohesion matters as much as commercial deals. Team leaders set the tone for compliance, for how much players publicly engage in institutional disputes, and for whether internal disagreements remain private or become headlines. Ter Stegen's move is being read as more than symbolic because the protest is tied to where the match will be played. An issue that sits at the intersection of sporting integrity, fan interest, and the club's strategic ambitions to expand its global footprint. For some executives and supporters, the Miami plan is about growth and new markets. For others, it feels like a relinquishing of identity. The captain's signature lands in the middle of that debate and forces uncomfortable questions. Is the captain safeguarding player interests at the cost of club strategy, or is he reflecting a broader sentiment among players who fear the commodification of their competitions? The answer is not neat, and that is precisely why the reaction is so Within the dressing room, questions of allegiance and influence will be quietly assessed. Will teammates who see themselves as close to the board shy away from the captain's stance? Or will this encouragement give voice to players who felt sidelined? Off the pitch, board members and commercial partners are watching how Barca manages the optics. A club that appears split between its leadership and its captain is harder to package to sponsors or to present as unequivocally in control when negotiating tours, friendly fixtures, or broadcast arrangements. The backstory matters in shaping those perceptions. Memories of the medical report dispute are still fresh enough that many at the club view this not as an isolated signatory act, but as part of a pattern of independent moves by a player who at times has resisted administrative requests. That history amplifies frustration and adds a layer of mistrust that will not vanish simply because a statement goes unsigned. Still, public confrontation is not inevitable. Clubs and captains have a long history of building back from moments like this through private conversations, mediated clarifications, and sometimes carefully worded public statements that smooth ruffled feathers. What makes this more combustible is timing. It is not merely a philosophical squabble, but one tied to a high-profile fixture that carries both sporting outcomes and significant revenue implications. For supporters who travel, who finance season ticket culture, and who view Barcelona as more than a global brand, the perception that decisions are being made in distant boardrooms, and that their captain opposes them, will sting. Supporters' reactions may push the club toward either a public defense of its plans or a softer renegotiation that pays heed to player and fan sentiment. In the short term, what to watch for is how the club frames the story. A measured internal response that emphasizes dialogue could calm things down. A terse public rebuke could escalate the divide. Equally important will be Ter Stegen's next moves, whether he publicly explains his reasoning, meets privately with club leaders to reconcile differences, or stands firm. Each path carries consequences for leadership within the squad. Ultimately, one signed letter has become a test of Barca's capacity to hold together competing priorities. Global growth versus local identity, commercial strategy versus player voice, board authority versus captain influence. The saga will tell us a lot about how modern football clubs manage internal dissent in an era when every gesture becomes headline news, and how a single figure can pivot from symbol of unity to the spark of a crisis that forces the club to choose between confrontation, compromise.